We are about to participate in an interesting webinar in a very few minutes, and we are so glad you took the time to join us. Before we tread on this journey, let me cover a few housekeeping tips. This is a webinar, so all of you will be muted. Please do not struggle to unmute yourself. This webinar, even though you will be muted, we would love to hear from you. So please feel free to use the chat as well as the Q&A box to put in your comments and questions anytime during the session. We will be monitoring these, and towards the end of the session, we will pose the questions to our guest, Mr. Amit Kumar. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be available on our YouTube channel. We welcome you to revisit the content yourself and share it with your friends. Please also be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to get updates on a regular basis. Let me now hand over to Muthu, our 2021 Michigan Chapter President, to talk to you about ASEI. Over to you, Muthu. Do you want to share your screen?
See my screen?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We are about to start. We'll get going in a minute or so. We are really excited and to start this 2021 journey, and really happy that you are able to spare some time this evening and join us in and talking to our Consul General of India from the Chicago office. And before we get on to the main part of the program today, which is a fireside chat with the Consul General, which will be led by our ASEI Director, Anjali Tiwari, as a moderator, as well as the chat initiation and coordination by our own Radhakrishnan from Troy, Michigan. So before we get on there, I just wanted to take you a little bit and talk to you about what ASEI is and what we do as a group. That brings me to my section of, first of all, I thank you again and a very warm welcome to all of you joining this evening's meeting. ASEI was established a couple of decades ago, mainly to strengthen the Indo-American relationship and use the platform as a channel of communication between technical organizations here within the US as well as abroad, especially India. So basically trying to be one of the bridges between our Janma Bhoomi, India, and our Karma Bhoomi, the US. And also, as part of this journey, we also wanted to, and we have been trying to encourage student participation in, we try to take part in various STEM education and so on. So I'll cover that real soon. So as I said, the vision of ASEI is to have a network of technical professionals all over the US and give them a strong platform to come together, share ideas, discuss with each other, and collaborate and learn from each other. And as part of our mission, we try to have networking opportunities for professional students and undergrads, high school students alike. We try to work on their student scholarship, promote STEM education, thereby strengthening our Indo-American relationship. And this has been happening over a couple of decades. And we have a very strong presence nationally too. So you see, what you see here is our national board of directors, and what we pride upon is to have a proper continuity through the years. So the past presidents still sign on to be part of the national board. Some of the some of the familiar faces you see here, they're from Michigan as well as from California. So we have a good representation from the east as well as the west part of the U.S. Um, and many of these members, they also sign up as an advisor, as you see. Moving on to our Michigan chapter, so our past national president is part of the national advisor team. Ramanujam, Jwalant, Santosh, Rakesh. These are folks that have been helping grow the ASEI organization over years, and we are great to have their leadership and their advisorship over years, and as well as happy to get their advice this year as well. And uh, um, here's our team, the real energetic team. I would say even I'm kind of the new kid on the block. Many of the faces here are really, really, supporters, good supporters of ASEI Michigan as well as at the national level. So we have our VP, Lalita Kamambati, our secretary, Anjali Wale, Ravi Majmudar has been our treasurer for years. I would say Vatsala, who's our ex-president, still signed on to be our events director this year. Our silent face is Sanjay Patel, who's kind of doing all the back-end work for our web systems. And our own Anjali Tiwari, whom you would see in the later part of today's presentation, who would also agree to sign on as a moderator for the rest of the event with Mr. Amit Kumar. So 2020, right? What a year has this been? Um, it's been a year of waiting, I would say. We were all waiting to get back to our workplaces. Our kids were waiting to get onto their school system and go back to their normal way of learning, while we were all waiting for everything to get back to normal. We are still in that waiting mode, but we are almost glad that it's going to be over very soon. And what the year also taught us time and again, or several months of waiting, is the importance of connections. So we took our time to be personally connecting, within our home, although we were not able to travel, go overseas, or to meet our loved near and dear ones in India and abroad. We tried to have those connections going on using the best of breed digital tools that are available today. Still gave us the importance of connections. So we were most of us at least were fortunate in connecting with each other using digital tools for the most part in our professional front as well. So if 2020 taught us anything, it taught us that there are some powerful effects out there that we couldn't control. But one thing we can still control, we were able to control, is this is how we respond to these kind of downtime and pandemic. And needless to say, the science part of the education that we all grew up with, the technology, the engineering, the mathematics that we all grew up with, and we still fancy and we actively work on our day-to-day lives, that came to our rescue. So science gave us hope in building the vaccine that came out within a record time. That has never, it's unprecedented compared to the 4 or 5 years time it typically took. So science and connections and all these things emphasize the importance that plays in our lives. And that's really, if anything, that we could come, in spite of all the lives that were lost and all the troubles that we went through, science still give us hope to march forward. And it also gives the significance of staying connected and promote this connectedness together. Also, one other thing from the top 10 reasons why we were able to get through these vaccines in such a short time is, healthcare advances, advanced research, real faster way of computing and running all these clinical trials in a multi-parallel fashion. All these things helped. One other thing that still came to the rescue was volunteering. If you really see I recently read a Guardian article that said among the top 10 reasons that really helped with this vaccine quick introduction, volunteering one's time really played a role. So moving on to, that's something, one of the things that we do. We try to stay connected within our professional network, and we also volunteer our time so that we give back to our younger generation, we give back to the community that we grew up in, and we give back to the community that we all came from. So as part of ASEI's activities, so we do these networking events that we meet monthly once. When things were normal, we used to meet in presence in a common place in the Detroit area. That's where our regional chapters really bring value to the members of meeting and sharing ideas, and we bring thought leaders and eminent speakers and executives from our own community who come and share their ideas. So it need not be engineering as you would see here all the time. In fact, last year in March, we brought our own Pratiksha, who was talking about finance complexities on a day the Dow Jones dove 1,100 points. And that's the last time we met, back in March before COVID hit. And we tried to still stay connected. So our own Deval Desai came and talked to us about automotive revolution beyond COVID, beyond 2020. Then we moved on with how leading organizations do product development during COVID. We continued on with the rise of computing in the modern day car, which is computer on 4 wheels these days. Then we also had some insightful discussion from this wonderful panel that you see here in the left bottom, ranging from academia to Accenture to Adobe, all our Indian brethren who's involved in various fields, experts of their own, as well as we didn't stop there. So engineers can listen to music too. So we moved on and had a real interesting discussion with C.P. Narayan, who was an IIT alum himself, but later moved on to inventing Kara Details, one of the popular musical rhymes that came out of India. So we had this variety of this discussion. Then as I alluded to before, so we had a YTE that we kept promoting, and it didn't stop there. There is so we went on with our national convention, which was a big success. We culminated in YTE, and I like to probably take a minute in
Absolutely. So tell me at the outset, what's the secret to your success? And then we'll get talking about your other ventures.
Yeah, so I think honestly, first of all, let's just define what success really means, because I think everybody has a very different idea of what success really means. So to me, the success is defined simply not by how much money you have in the bank, but how many lives you'll be able to improve. And with that definition, I think every one of us has a potential to be extremely successful. And to me, I would say,
yeah, this is just a glimpse of what we had, these innovative, engaging speakers. And it culminated in a YT event where we had real interesting young minds come and talk to us.
I'm a sophomore at Saratoga High School.
This particular
My semester project was an application to help the visually impaired read money using machine learning. Did you know that there are over 285 million people in the world who are blind? And one of them?
Yeah, I really running short of time, but these are some of the things that we do, and our national convention. is definitely one of the highlights of the events that we do every year. So as you saw, as small glimpse, these are the various things we do. We want to be involved with our youth and promote STEM education and work with them at various levels, science fair to universities and so on. And so these are some of the things planned for this year. And without taking too much of for the time, and we want to move to the next part of the program. There's an upcoming event coming, in 10 days from now, where we have this annual general body meeting. So we'll be sending you information on that. So with that, I would invite our Michigan team to come online so that we can welcome our chief guest from our Michigan board. Namaste, Amit Kumar ji.
Namaskar.
Thank you for joining us, and it's really our honor to have you here this evening. And you being the bridge between the largest two democracies that we came from, as well as we live our life in today. So we're really glad to have you here, and I'd like to leave you with a small panel that will be engaging with you for the next part of our program. And as we say, Atiti Devo Bhava, so they'll do the introduction of our guests. And before I go into much detail, I'd like to have Anjali Tiwari, who would introduce our guest as well as chief guest for the rest of the program. And I'd like to say a word or two about Anjali Tiwari ji. So she's our own engineer from our Detroit area. And recently she's been a director of maintenance and operation of our Kobo Center Hall, which is, anybody you ask about Kobo Center, people know in the Detroit area, that's where the largest North American international auto show happens year after year. So she has been a great maintenance and operation director there. And just before that, she was a general manager in the city of Detroit, managing demolition. I mean, one of the hardest jobs one can do. I would not dare to go and do those hard jobs. And she's done accolades doing that kind of hard jobs. And she's been a great promoter of our organization here at the national level, as well as for the Michigan chapter. So without any further explanation, I'll invite Anjali Tiwari ji to lead this the rest of the session, and she'll introduce Mr. Radha and Consul General. Thank you.
Thank you, Muthu. Thank you so much. And namaskar. Namaskar and Jai Hind. Namaskar and Jai Hind to our Consul General, Amit Kumar, and our guests. And by now you know I'm Anjali Tiwari, and I'm your moderator for this evening. Now, what is my work now here on? I have a very important job that I have to welcome our another special guest, that is Radha Krishnan. So I want to say a few words about Radha Krishnan before he takes over. So whatever I know about him, very little, not much, but that I will explain, or I can talk about it. Let me welcome special guest Radha Krishnan. He is an IIT alumnus who is also philanthropist and technologist from Michigan. We all can benefit from his experiences and understanding of technology-related developments. And we are blessed to have him with us. And that his technology-related developments are what he has done between India and USA. So that is a lot of experience, and we all are benefited by that, and we want him to be around us most of the time. So now I want him to join and welcome our Consul General and introduce them to our audience. Okay, Radha, so you can do that now? Right? Can you take over from here?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anjali. It's very kind of you to give that introduction. Amit Kumar ji, again, a very warm welcome on behalf of the Michigan ASEI chapter. It's indeed a great pleasure and honor to invite you to our event. I would like to take a few minutes to introduce your highly accomplished career to the audience today. Amit Kumar ji is a career diplomat, and he joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1995. He has a wide-ranging experience, having served in the headquarters and in several Indian missions abroad. He has dealt with both bilateral and multilateral work in diverse areas such as political, strategic, and economic spheres. Prior to taking up his current assignment as the Consul General of India in Chicago, he was the Deputy Chief of Mission in the Embassy of India, Washington, D.C., with an ambassador rank. His recent assignments include stints as Joint Secretary for Development Partnership Administration and as Joint Secretary for Human Resources Management in the Ministry of External Affairs, New Delhi. He was also Deputy Chief of Mission at the Embassy of India in Tokyo. He has previously served as Undersecretary China and Director in the Foreign Secretary's Office in New Delhi. His overseas assignments include stints in a number of key capitals, for example, as Third Secretary in the Embassy of India, Beijing, First Secretary dealing with political work in the Embassy of India in Berlin, First Secretary and Counselor dealing with political information, cultural, and education work at the Embassy of India, Ankara, Counselor and Head of the Economic and Commercial Wing in the Embassy of India, Beijing, and Counselor Minister dealing with Third Committee and UNSC matters in the Permanent Mission of India to the United Nations, New York. Ambassador Kumar holds a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from the IIT Kanpur, and he's married to Mrs. Surabhi Kumar and has 2 children. With that, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Amit Kumar for all of you. I would like to invite Mr. Amit Kumar to share your address.
Thank you very much, Radhakrishnan ji, and thank you also to Mr. Vari and to Mr. Sivanantham earlier. I'm of course delighted to be present here today at this event and look forward to our interaction today. I would like to formally thank the Michigan chapter of the American Society of Engineers of Indian Origin for today's interaction. I have been asked to speak on the theme of technology and development. And this is a rather broad topic straddling across several sectors. So let me put this in context of the India-US relations, what we are trying to do back in India, and of course in context of the impact of the pandemic. I'm sure we'll have more opportunity to touch upon related issues during the course of our interaction today. As you all are aware, there is a new US administration in place, and we will therefore be looking to work with them to further strengthen our relations, building on the gains of previous years. Our relations with the United States are very wide-ranging, and it would not be an exaggeration to say that they encompass every facet of human life. Of course, United States is a very important partner for us, and I think is critical for our transformation of our economy and realizing our development aspirations as well. We have a fairly robust collaboration with the United States when it comes to areas such as energy, science and technology, innovation, and so on. And there are a number of bilateral government-to-government dialogue mechanisms which are supplemented by contacts among businesses, academics, and scientists in diverse areas such as energy, health cooperation, outer space, and so on. For example, we have a strategic energy dialogue led at ministerial level. We have a dialogue at the secretary level between on issues relating to science and technology through the India-US S&T forum. And there are many others. There is a structured dialogue on outer space. Back in India, I think one of the primary objectives, and rather one of the priorities for the government, has been on use of science and technology, how to leverage it, how to leverage new emerging technologies for improving our governance, our delivery of services, in achieving our development goals, and advancing industry and manufacturing. A number of government ministries and departments are working towards these broad objectives. And primary among them would be Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Niti Aayog, and the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Prime Minister, as well as the Ministry of External Affairs through its embassies and the consulates. And you would all know how the government has used Aadhaar card for identification of beneficiaries of government schemes and direct transfer of subsidy amounts into the accounts of intended beneficiaries. And I think this has had a huge impact on plugging leakages in the system and improving financial inclusion for our citizens. Government also unveiled a new national education policy after 34 years. The vision and objective behind the policy is to fundamentally rethink and transform the manner in which our universities and function. Many of you would have experience of our education system. As you would, I think, would have felt, there is quite clearly a need to make the curriculum more flexible, put in place systems which make it, which allows universities to sort of quickly adapt to changes in industry. Another recent academic ones said that the half-life of existing knowledge is rapidly shrinking. So it's important that we move away from the rigid silo-based approach to more multidisciplinary approach to education, inculcate an inquiry-based approach, so we strengthen interface between universities and industry, incentivize research and innovation, and so on. So there is much to, of course, learn from the US experience, where universities have often led cutting-edge research. On another note, government has made a concerted effort to promote a favorable startup ecosystem in India. We have a nodal officer at the federal level who has been tasked with this responsibility. Our early experience has been positive. We are amongst the countries that have made the most significant progress in the Global Innovation Index ranking. We today have the third largest startup ecosystem, and we are home to 21 unicorns. But much work remains to be done in this sphere. Let me also make a few broad observations with regard to COVID-19 pandemic. We saw that the global economic activity came to a halt at the outset of the pandemic, sort of severely disrupting global supply chains. This has, of course, led to reassessment of global supply chains configuration, and particularly for critical sectors of sensitive technologies or in healthcare, where many countries are grappling with medical supply of critical medicines, pharmaceuticals, or personal protective equipment. And we believe that there is an opportunity for India to step up its efforts in this direction and become a more active player in the global economy. The call for Atmanirbhar Bharat by the Prime Minister needs to be seen in this context. The objective is simple: to build up national capacities so as to allow India to become a more active player globally. This is not a call to become autarkic or heading into a isolationist sort of tendency. But the idea is to shore up your domestic capabilities and be more active globally. COVID-19 pandemic also led to new forms of cooperation, almost unheard of in the race to develop the vaccine. And I hope that this will lead to new models of drug development, leading to reduced costs and more affordable medicines in the future. We have also seen fast tracking of adaptation of technology in a few sectors, particularly in the field of healthcare and education. And I think for a country like India, given our population and I think certain constraints of how much physical infrastructure we can sort of set up for healthcare and education, I think this will be a critical input and a critical sort of component moving forward. And lastly, at a far more general level, I think the pandemic will fundamentally transform how we work, live, or entertain ourselves. I think we are already seeing that there will be some sectors and industries where working from home might become the norm, or at least a greater part of the week might be spent from home. The era of big business conferences might be over, who knows? Frequency of business travel might get affected as companies sort of discover more affordable ways to conduct business. To conclude my remarks, I think on all the above aspects that I referred to in terms of India-US relations or developments in India, I believe that the American Society of Engineers of Indian origin can play an important part. As a community which has done exceedingly well as entrepreneurs and as engineers, I think you can all bring to bear resources, ideas, technologies, your experiences, best practices, or innovation to address development challenges faced by us. So I do look forward to a continued engagement with you all and to receiving your suggestions for making things better for both our nations. Thank you.
Thank you, Amit Kumar ji. It's been quite enlightening to hear from you about the tight collaboration between US and India. And we as we as engineers from India who have settled down in the US, it gives us great opportunity to give back to our Mathrubhumi in India. So a lot of the points that you have highlighted is very close to our heart. So moving on to the next part of the program, we would like to start the so-called fireside chat with a Q&A session. And myself and Anjali Tiwari ji would be handling that part of it. And with that, I would like to request Anjali to start off with the very first question.
Thank you, Radha, again. And we will start now our question and answer session. Okay. So I have my list, and tell audience, enjoy this conversation. Let them enjoy. So my first question goes to our Consul General is, how can ASEI be a part of the Make of India plan? And looks like you have already answered, but I would like to hear again.
No, thank you.
And audience would like to know.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I think, as I said, there was already a focus on Make in India, and I think it has come in for, I think, renewed attention because of the pandemic. Now, as you all know, the share of manufacturing in India's GDP remains limited. It is under 20%, and the idea was to raise it to at least 25% and more in the coming years. And what the government has done is to identify 25 sectors. These are very broad. I can mention a few. These include, for example, automobiles, chemicals, construction, defense manufacturing, electrical machinery, food processing, infrastructure, and so on. And the idea is to make it easier for business, for foreign investors who come in and help us develop these sectors. Of course, how ASEI can be part of this would depend on interests of individual members. I understand your members would be drawn from different backgrounds. Whether we can do something more institutionally, we can certainly explore moving forward. But there are certainly two areas where I feel the ASEI members can immediately contribute. One is the startup division in the Ministry of Commerce is looking for to organize sessions where successful entrepreneurs of Indian origin around the world can talk to people who are starting with their startups or have innovative ideas and sort of guide them in terms of how they should approach business and how to take ideas to a stage of commercial sort of adaptation. So that is an area where I think new members can certainly contribute. Another, I think institutionally, I had talked about reforms in the higher education sector, and professional bodies like the All India Council for Technical Education is drawing up an implementation plan of what it should look like and how technical institutions become more sort of multidisciplinary in approach, have a more flexible curriculum. And this is an area where I think once we have the initial plan, we will be consulting a few academics in US universities for their inputs. And I think ASEI can also perhaps contribute in that process. So once that document is ready, I will share it with you. And some of your members can perhaps take a look and give some suggestions.
I would like to add a point to Amit Kumar ji's comments. An entrepreneur myself, we have offices in India, China, and Japan besides Michigan. Last year, we did 2 projects aimed at India, aimed at the economy of India. One is electric 2-wheelers. Naturally, for a cleaner economy, cleaner, greener economy, India produces literally 20 million or so 2-wheelers, and imagine the potential to make them all electric. That's a very India-centric project. And another one was a drone to scare away birds in airports to avoid bird hits, etc., specifically aimed at Indian airports. So I do believe engineers like us who have settled down here in the US have a great way we can give back to India with respect to the Indian economic conditions. So just a point I want to add.
No, I fully agree with that, because many of you have, I think, invested in India or have undertaken projects in India, and there are, I think, many projects which have grown organically because people in India are already working there. So I did not acknowledge that, but it's an important part of the ongoing matrix of cooperation.
Thank you.
Very good. Very good.
Me to another question. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Are we done, Radha, or you still have something to
no, I
talk
was going
further,
to
Radha?
the second question.
Okay. Go with the second one.
Sure. Amit Kumar ji, with sustainable development on everyone's mind, which specific areas do you think India will be focusing on in especially fostering a greener economy? In addition, of course, how we as ASEI members can contribute towards those efforts?
No, again, I think this is a very interesting question, and government is indeed committed to a sustainable development, of course, and making the economy green. In fact, I must point out that India is the only country which has actually exceeded its commitments under the Paris Treaty Accord. So, as you might be aware, countries had set targets, and we had a target of, for example, 175 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2020, and we expect to, of course, exceed it, but it might reach 220 gigawatts by the end of next year. We, of course, have set a more ambitious target of 450 gigawatts by 2030. We currently, in terms of our capacity, we have the fourth largest renewable energy capacity in the world, and the capacity expansion that we are undertaking is also one of the largest in the world. But moving away from a focus on renewable energy, I think what is happening is very interesting. One, of course, is how innovation or innovative solutions are being thought of. For example, we have the Cochin airport today is entirely, this entire energy requirement is met through solar energy. We have just started a floating solar power plant, which is 220 megawatts in Madhya Pradesh. This is, of course, we have used the dam reservoir to install this floating solar farm. So I think there are many things being done which are of interest. We have a national drive to use LED lamps, so replace the normal cadence lamps by LED ones. And I think as per current statistics, it is reducing carbon dioxide emissions by 38.5 million tons every year. We also, of course, have under the Ujjwala scheme provided 80 million households with access to clean cooking health. So this is, of course, a lot of benefits to the women workforce. It is important for their health. It also sort of reduces their time spent in the kitchen, and so there are multiple benefits which flows out of such schemes. You have mentioned about electric vehicles, and moving forward, government is looking forward at this sector. There is a lot of emphasis. I think, again, I don't know the current status, but I think there's a bit of debate on where we should focus on. Should it be public transport? Should it be two-wheelers? Of course, and the attendant problem of creating electric charging infrastructure. So, but this is very much on the top of the mind of the government to have an enabling EV segment where the focus will eventually land. I am not clear at this point of time. And then we have, in terms of transport infrastructure, there are more mass transit highways under discussion. There's also emphasis on using waterways for transports. And I just also wanted to mention one thing. India has taken the lead in creating international partnerships through bodies like International Solar Alliance and the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. I think both these initiatives are very important in terms of sustainable development and greener economy goals for us.
Thank you. Yeah. Anjali, back to you.
Go with the next question. Our next question is one of the agenda of our ASEI, that's our organization, ASEI, is to encourage involvement of youth in technology. So we are thinking, how can ASEI coordinate with the youth in India to make this happen?
No, I think as it's a very interesting proposition, and I think there is value in trying to explore partnership in this respect. As I mentioned, one of the things would be mentorship for young entrepreneurs in India. The other would be, again, in terms of your inputs for in redesigning of a curriculum for higher education. But I think I need a little more thinking on how we can build on these two ideas and create more avenues for involving youth in technology. I think it is very important that our younger workforce develop critical thinking skills and problem-solving approaches. And I am cognizant of the fact that if we are successfully able to implement what we envisage in the new national education policy, that will lead to this objective. But of course, we will need partners, and I think ASEI can be a potential partner in this area as well.
Very good, very good. We like that answer. At least we'll be part. Now, Radha, you'll take the next, no?
Sure.
You can go with the next one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This has been one of the common, frequently asked questions among Indian engineers settled down in the US. If they want to start a venture in India, how can the entire process be made a lot easier and simpler with less paperwork and bureaucracy on the Indian side? So could you please throw some light onto that?
No, I think it's a relevant question, and what I would say is that this is a work in progress, of course. But if you look at the past 5 years, for example, and look at India's ranking in terms of ease of doing business, so we have risen from 142 to 63 over the past 5 years. We have state governments actually taking active interest in improving the business processes and clearances, because at the end of the day, the federal government, of course, says the overarching framework of policy, but it is the states in India who actually deliver. And I think that is one reason why we have seen that certain states have taken the lead in being more industrialized, especially in southern western part of India. And so today we are seeing, and Niti Aayog has encouraged this, and federal government has also encouraged. So we are seeing more competition among states to improve their processes. We have, in terms of small initiatives, which of course, when seen together, will improve conditions. One is, for example, government has significantly reformed the labor laws in India. This would, I know this doesn't answer the question about paperwork, but I'm just trying to give a broader picture of how it's becoming easier for business for entrepreneurs and businessmen to set up new businesses in India. In the past, if you were to hire labor, for example, you could only do it through an authorized agency. Under the revised framework, it has become much easier to hire labor. We had a whole lot of minimum wages, so that has been streamlined. Compliance requirements for labor and social security and working conditions have been brought down drastically. So that is one way of improving. All state governments are trying to reduce the time for processing. They're trying to use technology to make it easier to submit papers and documentation online. So I would just say that this remains a work in progress. Things have improved much more over the past 5 years, but more can be done.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Radha, the next question is, not my area, but I'll take it. how can Indian Consulate Office help with H1B situation? Is there any way we can help? That's the question.
No, I think we are all aware of the H1B visas, visa issues, and this being a policy matter is normally dealt by our embassy. They are in touch with the concerned agencies on the US side. So what I would suggest is, if you have any specific inputs as a professional body, please feel free to pass on to us, and we will certainly pass it on to our embassy, and who can probably incorporate those inputs in. But we do understand that there is I think this is broadly an issue for the US government to consider, and we can of course put across our point of view on that.
Amit Kumar ji, we are also inviting questions from the audience. One of the queries from the audience is as follows. Obviously, India has no dearth for talent. There's a lot of great ideas on new startup companies with new technology ideas coming from India. Okay, how can those ideas and entrepreneurs who are looking for capital be connected with NRIs in the US and PIOs in the US, so that obviously all those ideas can be brought to fruition?
No, it's a very, very interesting questions. And in fact, just to add on, one interesting thing that has happened is that startups which have become successful in India are typically looking at the US when they're trying to expand. And similarly, startups in the US are looking at India in terms of a market when they're trying to venture outside the US. So it's very interesting. What the consulate has done in the past, I can just give you an example. We had a fund that gotten in touch with the consulate, and this is a fund primarily put together by Indian Americans with only one focus, which was to look at possible investments in the startup space in India. So as I said, now the federal government has tasked the officer with this responsibility. So we had put them in touch. That particular fund was sector agnostic, but so long as the startup was using technology to deliver outcomes, and so they were fairly flexible in terms of looking at startups. But I think their condition was that it should be using emerging technologies like AI or internet-based platforms and so on. So I think one way would be, if ASEI knows of funds, or some of your members are interested in linking up with India, I can put you in touch with the concerned department in India, and I think they would be best placed. It would not be possible for the consulate directly to link up, but they can certainly facilitate this matter.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe.
Yeah, go ahead, Radha. Go ahead.
I was looking at the time as we are reaching the end of the hour. Anjali, do you have any other queries that you want to ask before we go to the parting remarks? Yeah.
I have few questions, but you are saying we don't have time, so we can't go further. Right?
Go ahead.
I have around 10 minutes with me, so we can go a little beyond 6 p.m.
So I'll take this important question. Most of the people were asking this. Would you please consider simplifying the emergency visa process for US citizens of Indian origin who are more than 18 years old and have a valid multiple entry tourist visa background? We obtained this visa after submitting all the documents. So what do you say?
No, so basically, I know we have right now travel is not fully resumed, and tourist visas remain suspended. So, and that is why I think we have an emergency visa process. But I do take your point, and we will write to ministry back home and see if we can somehow simplify this further. What we are doing is, for emergency cases, we do take in visa applications, issue them even on weekends or public holidays if so required. But whether it can be further sort of simplified, we'll certainly take a look, because right now it's a global policy, as you know. It is not devised country by country.
That's good enough for now. Thank you so much. Radha, you have anything?
Great. Maybe one last question before we go on to the parting remarks. There are a lot of foreign investments happening in India, and new ventures started by multinational companies setting it up in India. What is your view on being able to sustain all these investments for a long duration?
No, so if you look at investments that came in last year, so we had around $57 billion of investments. A large portion was in the digital space. So of course, this reflects the potential in India for internet-based sort of commerce and innovative sort of platforms to deliver services, and so that is there. But for example, what do we need to sustain is, of course, we have to have the necessary IT infrastructure in place. And again, I think innovation in delivery of internet services is something that that will need to be thought through. I've heard of Facebook talking about using some sort of a network of balloons to try and provide internet connectivity. I know that Amazon and Elon Musk company is looking at low orbit satellites for internet connectivity infrastructure. And I think these type of ideas will be important, because, as you know, India is a very vast country. We have several remote inaccessible areas, and if we really want to deliver services and make it more equitable and affordable, we will need to, of course, look at these. The other part of the matrix would be employability and skills of our own younger population as they come into the labor force. And again, we need to sort of anticipate what type of skills will be required. I think the pace of what do we say, automation, and all underpinned by growing computing prowess and abilities to sort of crunch through large amounts of data, would mean that certain types of jobs will disappear in the next decade, for example. And therefore, it's equally important to look at areas where we need skills and accordingly train our workforce. And perhaps this is an area where a professional body like ASEI can provide inputs, basically looking at the horizon and see what type of skills might be required. And of course, in India, there's a lot of, as I mentioned, there's a lot of focus on how to utilize the potential of AI or machine learning to improve our delivery of services, and or say in the area of healthcare or education. We also need to recognize that much of innovation that will happen in India would have to be necessarily smartphone based. The number of PCs and computers in India remain very small, but the number of people using smartphones for data and services is very large. So that is there. Again, if you talk of broad industry, we have to look at how automation of work and industry 4.0, or how digitization would broadly apply to engineering processes or to industry. I think we all need to sort of think through and again look at the specific skill sets that will be required. So I think that is very important to sustain both investments and to, in fact, realize our own development goals.
Great. Thank you very much. That was very, very in-depth answer that we got from you. Very useful. Now that we have come very close to the end of the session, Amit Kumar ji, any concluding remarks from you for the benefit of the audience?
Well,
We would like to hear something. Yes, definitely.
I would say that I sort of enjoyed this conversation, and moving forward, I think I hope to maintain contacts with ASEI on some of the issues that we discussed, and I'll certainly sort of I've taken note of some of these questions, and I'll come back to you as to how we can collaborate. But as I mentioned, because you all have been very successful here, and I think sharing of your expertise, experiences, I think we should try and leverage that for some of our initiatives back home. I know many of you are already working in India, but if we can somehow do that more systematically, I think it will bring great value to India and to your home countries.
Very good. Very good. Thank you so much for all that information and answers.
Thank you very much.
So, Radha, what is next?
Great. Thanks again to Amit Kumar ji. With this, I would like to request Anju Wale to propose the vote of thanks. Anju.
So this is Anju Wale. And again, on behalf of Michigan ASEI team, I would like to thank Mr. Amit ji for really sharing wonderful information, sharing his valuable time with us. So thank you very much. Really, really appreciate it. And he answered a lot of our questions, got a lot of, very good information. So thank you very much. And this was our first event. So we are really happy to have you here with all of us with, online sessions and all that. So people can take advantage of it. Thank you, Mr. Radha, Ms. Anjali Tiwari for moderating these sessions. It was really nice, very good questions, good information. So thank you very much. And thanks to our new president for 2021, Muthu. He is doing really good job and excited for this year. Thank you, Lalita, who is a vice president also for this year. And Vatsala, who is handling our back support for technology, webinar. Good job and great, wonderful. It is going very smooth. So thank you very much. And last, not the least, but the whole ASEI team, Michigan team, really thank you for all the support for making this team event successful. So thank you very much for everybody. All right.
We can say Jai Hind, Jai Hind, Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming.
One last thing, all the questions that are there in the chat session, we will try to send them to Mr. Amit Kumar and get the answers back to you. So you can send your email addresses. We'll try our best, and Mr. Amit Kumar will definitely look into it. So thank you, sir, once again.
Thank you. I'll make sure that we get back to you on those queries.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mohan.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.